It all began on a crisp Monday morning. I stepped out of my house with a steaming cup of coffee, expecting the usual calm of my property. But the sight that greeted me made my blood run cold. Construction crews were bulldozing the edge of my land, and at first, I thought I was seeing things. I rubbed my eyes and squinted at the site signs. Sunset Estates, HOA, it read. That's when it hit me. They were building homes on my 98 homes. 98 rooftops that would soon stand where my family had lived for generations. My mind raced. How had they even gotten permission? I stormed toward the site manager, my heart pounding. Who authorized this? I demanded. He stammered, clearly caught off guard. We assumed it was okay, he mumbled. Assumed it was okay? On my land? The audacity made my blood boil. I realized the HOA had no idea who they were messing with. Years ago, I had quietly secured every legal claim on this property. Every boundary, every right-of-way. I had anticipated a day like this. And now, without knowing it, they had stepped right into my trap that I called my attorney immediately. They're building on my land, I said, try to keep my voice steady. And they don't even know the storm they've unleashed at BY noon. The news had spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering in disbelief. Some were angry, some were scared, but all eyes were on me, waiting to see what I would do next. I knew a direct confrontation would only escalate things. I needed a strategy, a plan so airtight that the HOA wouldn't just regret their actions. They'd pay for every inch they encroached. Point 66. I knew a direct confrontation would only escalate things. I needed a strategy, a plan so airtight that the HOA wouldn't just regret their actions. They'd pay for every inch they encroached. I pulled out the old legal documents, each page meticulously annotated. Every misstep by the HOA, every unauthorized permit, every overlooked regulation. It was all there, waiting to be used. The HOA board members were smug, thinking they had the upper hand. They assumed I was just another quiet neighbor who wouldn't fight back. They had no idea how wrong they were. I sent a formal cease and desist letter. Every word was carefully chosen. I didn't just demand they stop. I hinted at the legal storm that awaited them if they continued. Paragraph. I sent a formal cease and desist letter. Every word was carefully chosen. I didn't just demand they stop. I hinted at the legal storm that awaited them if they continued. By the next morning, construction crews were still working. Some glanced nervously at me as I walked the property line, clipboard in hand, ready to document every violation. I knew patience was key. I didn't want to just react. I wanted to control the narrative, turn their arrogance against them. Neighbors started approaching me, offering information about HOA meetings, permits, and approvals. I listened carefully, piecing together their mistakes, their oversights, their shortcuts. Each small detail became ammunition. Every improperly filed permit, every bypass procedure, I cataloged it meticulously. Meanwhile, the HOA seemed oblivious to the danger lurking in their oversight. They celebrated the progress of construction, unaware that their triumph was temporary. I hired a surveyor to map the property boundaries precisely. The results were shocking to them. Many of the homes were clearly encroaching on my land. Armed with hard evidence, I contacted the local council. You need to see this, I said. They've built without proper authorization on private property. The council responded quickly, shocked at the blatant violation. They promised immediate action, and suddenly the HOA's smug confidence wavered. I could see panic ripple through the board. Emails flew back and forth, calls were made, but it was too late. The legal trap had been sprung. See panic ripple through the board. Emails flew back and forth, calls were made, but it was too late. The legal trap had been sprung. The first day of the hearing arrived. I walked into the room calm, composed, every piece of evidence laid out neatly in folders. The HOA representatives fidgeted, uncomfortable under my gaze. Their lawyer tried to dismiss the claims as minor errors. I countered with precision, showing timelines, property maps, and documented communications. By the end of the first session, the judge leaned back, visibly impressed by the thoroughness of my case. The HOA's smugness had evaporated completely. Outside the courthouse, neighbors whispered their amazement. Some offered congratulations. Others were simply relieved that someone had finally stood up to the overreaching HOA. The battle wasn't over yet. I knew there would be appeals, delays, and more legal maneuvering. But the momentum had shifted. The HOA was now on the defensive. I spent the next week monitoring the site, documenting every single construction activity. Photographs, videos, timestamps. Nothing was left to chance. The board attempted a last-minute settlement offer. They thought they could buy their way out. I smiled politely and declined. Their arrogance had cost them too much already. The hearings continued, each session revealing more HOA violations. My lawyer presented a meticulously prepared case. While the board's representatives struggled to keep up the AT home, I felt a mix of relief and tension. Relief that justice seemed near, tension because I knew how far they could still push to avoid consequences. One evening, as I reviewed documents on my porch, my phone buzzed. It was my attorney. "They messed up again," he said. "They filed a contradictory statement in court today. We can use it." I leaned back, satisfied. The HOA was crumbling from the inside. The next hearing was brutal for them. Their contradictory filings were exposed immediately. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you even understand your own documentation?" he asked the HOA lawyer. The courtroom snickered quietly. The board members looked like they were melting in their seats. For the first time, they realized this wasn't a simple dispute. They had walked directly into a legal minefield. Meanwhile, the construction site had gone silent. Equipment sat idle. Workers were told to pause until further notice. The land looked frozen in time, a half-finished monument to their arrogance that I visited the site one more time, standing at the property line. 98 homes, I whispered, and not one of them legally stands. It wasn't bragging. It was the reality they created themselves. The HOA tried to rally public support, sending misleading letters to residents. But the community had already seen the truth. They knew who was right. Their sympathy leaned toward me. One neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Clark, brought me a pie. "Someone had to put them in their place," she said with a warm smile. I chuckled. I didn't want to fight. They chose one. 44 as the final hearing approached, tension wrapped around the entire neighborhood. Everyone whispered about the upcoming judgment, unsure how far the consequences would stretch. The courtroom was packed that day. Residents, reporters, attorneys, everyone wanted to witness the verdict. The HOA board sat stiffly, their confidence long gone. That MY lawyer presented the final summary. Unauthorized construction, illegal encroachment, fraudulent permits, and violation of private property rights. Each point hit them like a hammer. When their turn came, the HOA attorney stammered, reaching for excuses, blaming contractors, blaming miscommunication, blaming everything except their own greed. The judge sighed heavily. "This is one of the most reckless displays of negligence I've seen from a homeowners association," he said. The room fell silent. Then came the moment. In favor of the plaintiff, the judge declared. My heart finally relaxed. It was official. I had won. But that wasn't all. The judge announced a heavy fine, large enough to shake the entire HOA financially. And then, the biggest blow. Every home built on my land had to be removed or purchased at my terms. Gasps filled the courtroom. The board paled. They hadn't just lost. They had been crushed. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters surrounded me. "How does it feel to beat the HOA?" one asked. I smiled calmly. Justice feels quiet. But today it's loud. Residents approached me with relief. Some had already invested in those new homes and were furious at the HOA for misleading them. I sympathized. They were victims too. Back at home, I received email after email from people thanking me for standing up, saying I'd saved the neighborhood from corruption. I wasn't a hero. I was simply defending what was mine. The HOA scrambled to avoid bankruptcy. They held emergency meetings, begged contractors for refunds, and tried to negotiate settlements. But the damage was irreversible that I was offered millions for the land. My terms were simple: full payment plus penalties for every day they delayed. They reluctantly agreed. The check they wrote was the largest I had ever seen. And the irony? They could have simply asked for permission years ago, and I might have considered selling. But greed blinds people, and their arrogance had turned a simple negotiation into a courtroom disaster. Weeks later, bulldozers arrived, not to build but to demolish. The sound echoed across the neighborhood. Homes they had proudly advertised were now being torn down piece by piece. Residents watched with mixed emotions. Some felt justice. Some felt sadness. Everyone felt the impact of the HOA's decisions. I walked the property line again, watching the demolition. Not proudly, not angrily, just with a sense of closure. The land was finally free again. My lawyer joined me. "You handled this with patience," he said. "Most people would have exploded." I shrugged. Explosions don't win battles. Strategy does. The story spread nationwide. Newspapers cover the case. Videos went viral. The man who outsmarted his HOA. One headline read. People began emailing me their own horror stories. HOA abuse, corruption, intimidation. My inbox was full for weeks. I realized something. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a wake-up call. HOA boards couldn't keep abusing power without consequences. Eventually, the land returned to its quiet state. Birds chirped, trees swayed, and the chaos faded into memory. Peace had returned. I built a small bench overlooking the property. Sometimes I'd sit there at sunset, thinking about how close I came to losing everything. But every time, I reminded myself, preparation is power. And I had prepared better than anyone else. Still, life felt lighter. Calm, balanced. Like the land itself was grateful to be respected again. Ted. Some neighbors joked that I should join the HOA board now. I laughed. I've had enough HOA drama for a lifetime, I told them. Still, life felt lighter. Calm, balanced. Like the land itself was grateful to be respected again. The HOA elected new leadership. People who valued transparency, fairness, honesty. They even apologized to me publicly. I accepted, not because I needed their forgiveness, but because the community needed healing. Months passed. Grass grew over the old construction scars. Nature reclaimed what was always hers. One evening, as the sky turned orange, I smiled to myself. They built 98 homes on my land and never realized they were building their own downfall. What they thought was a victory was actually a trap of their own making. And as for me, I kept my land, my peace, and my pride. Because no matter how powerful an HOA thinks it is, nothing beats a man who knows his rights. Even after the lawsuit ended, the aftermath lingered like a shadow. The HOA's reputation had taken a beating, and residents were more cautious than ever. People finally understood how fragile their trust had been. One of the former board members approached me at the grocery store. His eyes were hollow. "I never thought it would go this far," he whispered. I nodded slowly. "That's the problem. You didn't think." He walked away quietly, shoulders slumped. It was strange, seeing someone who once acted so powerful now look so small. Meanwhile, the land inspection continued. State officials wanted to ensure everything was. One inspector said, "Honestly, you handled this better than most professionals." I chuckled. Guess the land teaches you a thing. Or weeks later, I found contractors returning, not to build, but to repair the damage they caused while trespassing. Under the court order, the HOA was footing every bill. Fully restored. They praised my documentation, saying it saved months of research. I didn't expect applause, just justice. I watched them work. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just closure. They were finally undoing what never should have happened. A group of neighbors gathered around me, curious. "So what are you going to do with the land now?" one of them asked. I looked across the open field, the sunset casting golden shadows. "Something peaceful," I replied. Rumors spread. Some thought I'd build a park. Others assumed I'd sell to a different developer. But I wasn't in a hurry. After everything that had happened, Patience felt like my strongest weapon. During one quiet evening, I received a letter, an apology from a new HOA board. It wasn't generic. It was personal, thoughtful, sincere. It surprised me. They even invited me to speak at a community meeting, hoping my experience could help shape new rules that protected homeowners instead of exploiting them. That I hesitated, but eventually agreed. Sharing the story wasn't about revenge. It was about ensuring history didn't repeat itself. The meeting, the room went silent as I walked in. Faces turned, some nervous, some grateful. I cleared my throat and began. This isn't a story about winning. It's a story about what happens when people in power forget their responsibility. I explained every step, how easy it is for an HOA to overstep, and how important it is for homeowners to know their rights. People listened closely, taking notes. When I finished, a man in the back stood up. "Thank you," he said. "You saved us from becoming another HOA victim story." His words hit harder than I expected. After the meeting, people lined up just to shake my hand. Some apologized for doubting me in the beginning. Others share their own stories, small battles, big frustrations, unfair fines. That it became clear to me. This wasn't just about land. It was about accountability, community, standing up when everyone else stays silent. The next day, I took a walk along the boundary again. The air felt cleaner. The earth felt lighter. It was as if the land knew the war was over. I paused at the old oak tree. My father planted it decades ago. I placed my hand on its bark and whispered, "We protected it, just like you wanted."